try this.
I've never recorded to the cloud.
Me neither. I'm not going to try now. We're thinking about recording. We're going to use the same old way we do it. You can record it to the cloud, but that seems so theoretical.
Right? What if it rains?
It'll get wet.
Yes. Oh, that. Wow, maybe we can begin with a little bow and some sitting and go from there. We can just sit basically alive. Or that basic aliveness. Just noticing that. You don't have to do any particular meditation technique. You could just be yourself. Noticing how you experience the world as you are right now. So that's a good start. So this is a chance for us to check in. There's been quite a lot of material we went through with the 25 classes and, you know, looking at that. And that was part of a sort of birthing process of looking at, you know, the traditional teachings, the Lam Rim path, gradual path of, and both the traditional path as it might be taught in the Kagyu tradition, and then also bringing in some other elements like Shambhala lineage approach or view, and then also some elements from India pre-Tibet, the Yogacaran elements. And all of this is to say that we also, we're not reinventing the wheel at all in this stuff, but we are trying to come up with a cultural translation, not just the literary translation, which is good and important, but then there's all these contexts. And Trungpa Rinpoche was very clear that he didn't want us picking up Tibetanisms and problems that happened in Tibet. He was very critical of that. And, even so much that he would have us sometimes go back to the Sanskrit, or he would just not, he would talk openly about not just trusting someone because they happen to be a Tibetan teacher, but really being like, hey, come on, what's your culture? And he was unique, among many of the lamas coming over, where he was like, yeah, I'm going to share everything. And his colleagues were worried about him, in the Kagyu tradition. They're like, what's this guy doing? His Holiness the Karmapa believed in him, but all the people around him were saying, yeah, but we don't like this guy. He's dangerous. He's outrageous. He's yeah, whatever. And then you have the people saying, don't share all these profound teachings. They couldn't handle them. So I guess that all remains to be seen. But the point is that we're doing the best we can, and he believed in us. But in the process of translating all of these things, I really believe each of us has to find our own karmic connection. Our own, and we have that. I'm so happy we're working on this stuff together, exploring that. I feel excited about exploring with you. And so we've been doing the gradual path stuff. We've been doing the sadhana of Mahamudra bit by bit. We'll do another installation soon of that. And at the same time, I've been trying to work out, trusting myself to transmit what I've learned in a way that reflects my understanding of the challenges and opportunities for us, with approaching practice. And so the 25 classes were kind of a birthing process, as I said, of trying to explore all these different threads. And then out of that, through that process, and with Janet's help for sure, I was able to kind of see a certain way that we could work through material systematically and more deeply. And along with that, we have the Kempo songs and this kind of classic tradition that I hold from being his student, and we'll continue doing that. And I hope to do for our next sort of study materials some more of those songs, and then commentaries on the verses that we can go through, because they're profound dohas or songs of realization. That's how a lot of these great teachers taught, is they just sort of, they came up with these songs that were their particular way of expressing their connection and realization of the teaching. And so that was, primarily what Milarepa did, as well as Gonsangpa and other, many other teachers. So those will be another element. There are some things I'd love for us to do in person. I'm not sure how that'll work out. I did think about us trying to do a retreat this year, and just with everything going on in my life, and it was a hard time to schedule. There's a possibility that we could still do something in December, but we can talk about that more later. But I do think planning something and making an effort, if we can, to get many of us together, I just feel like it would be so powerful and help us use this platform, more thoroughly. So we'll work on that. But we're small but mighty little group. But we have, I think we're really a tremendously sweet group of people. I'm so excited about going deeper, and I've been saying that for a while, but actually now feel like I do have more to offer than I did before. It was unfolding. However, some of it I feel like, yeah, needs some of the in-person element and some of it doesn't. So it's going to be a little bit of both, And what I want to do is share this sort of systematic way of working with the path that has like 3 phases. It's not exactly like the yanas, but kind of like Hinayana Mahayana would be the first 7 teachings. The second 7 would be more what we would call Vajrayana. And then the last 7 would be related to what we might call Vipassana or Dzogchen type teachings. But that's kind of how it would break down if you were gonna, although it's not exactly those things. Yeah, cool, cool. And so there's a successive element to it, but there's also a nonlinear element. And the way that they've been, geez, I wonder if I have a picture. This would probably be just more confusing than anything else. If I can even find a picture. Let me see, photo. I know I had one on here somewhere. Probably could have gotten this. Are you going to bring it up on your phone? Let me see. Anyway. Let me see. Funny, I was just looking at it before I got on here. Well, doesn't matter. It's on my phone too, but it's still baffling. Oh, you do have it. Okay.
Do you want to use that?
Yeah, hold on. No, I'll just hold it up. It'll be totally baffling. All right. Okay, you can see that, right? Doesn't mean it makes any sense, but I like the rainbows, huh? Okay.
It is pretty psychedelic.
It's pretty psychedelic. So it's a symbol. There's lots of symbolic quality to that. And what it's symbolizing is these 7, sets of the set of 3 and each 7 of gestures. But so there are these sort of gestures, mudras, if you will, symbols that symbolize the actual practice. And that's not like the whole point or anything. It's just that's a somatic technique, something where we're connecting subtle experiences with physical movement and embodiment. And what that does is it helps us so that we could actually apply these things on the spot, bring about, induce a subtle experience through, and you can even visualize the gesture inside. So it's a non-conceptual embodied way to evoke a subtle experience that one can build on and keep the momentum of one's path and realization deepening. It's a thing. We'll see how it goes. It's been I've been doing it. Janet's been messing around with it, and a few other people, and the early feedback is good, right?
I would say it's awesome.
Okay. So there's been, and it's been a thing where you can either do a full sequence, you can emphasize one. There's a shortened version that would just be the 5. There's a way that it could be done like one day after the other, across 20. There's a way that one could focus on a segment of them for a longer period of time and go deeper. Each gesture is a jumping off point for a deeper set of teachings that we already may have been aware of or not. But again, it's a non-conceptual key in to experiences. And I believe the somatic memory thing is really powerful. And I think it'll help us bring these things more into our daily life. And rather than, we have so much written information in liturgy, but there's nothing wrong with that. And today there was some kind of attempt to put together a little, some verses that ended up coming out in kind of like 3-line haiku for each one. We were like, oh, that's cool. So I thought I'd read them to you tonight, just as like a sampling. But all of these will require a lot of unpacking, a lot of practice, a lot of dialogue. It's very dialogic, right? It's very much about empowering the gesture to be a symbol for the depth of practice that's behind it, that it connects you to. So it's really a culture and a technology to help us do meditation practice in what's called, and the sort of very glamorous title for it is, let me see, I know it's the 21 Gestures, the Natural Transmission of the Living Sadhana. So that gives you an idea. I hope that's ostentatious enough. I think I might have to amp it up a little more, but it's
Root verses.
Oh yes, that's right. Root verse. That'll make it. That helps. I took that out, but that's true. So living sadhana, just say a little bit there. Living sadhana means, a sadhana is a liturgy of best practices written usually, right? And we know this from the sadhana of Mahamudra. It means daily practice, actually. And the sadhanas that were given in India were by the Mahasiddhas, or the yogis and yoginis. Some of them were siddhas. Technically, they weren't Maha. I don't know. Beyond me. There were different grades, I guess. But they all had some realization of teachings. And what they would do is they'd come along and meet someone and go, what's your problem? And the person would go, well, I'm blank. And they go, well, then you need, everyone's suffering. And they're like, yeah. Do you want some teachings? They're like, uh-huh. And they're like, okay, here's your sadhana. And if you were a blacksmith, they'd be like, hammer that metal into the Dharmakaya of freedom, and they give you some customized practice for your job or your caste or for your lot in life. And then that was your sadhana. And Trungpa Rinpoche was very keen on us having inspiration from these characters of India, which in some ways is more probably how we're going to manifest than the Tibetan culture, which was homogenous and very focused on religion, whereas the Mahasiddhas were among a very diverse, vast society. Anyway, he also wanted us to emulate them because they were living practice in everyday life. Most of them were not monastic as in the Tibetan tradition. They also weren't just yogic in the sense of going into caves. A lot of them actually lived in the world. A lot of the stories center around people. Some of them, they go off and come back, but there's a variety. But a lot of them indicate people that really did live somewhat like us. So a living sadhana, just as an idea, is that your sadhana is your daily life. This is very straightforward stuff, right? Every practice in everyday life. How do you bring your practice into everyday life? What is the practice if it's not relating to your everyday life? So the idea of a living sadhana is that the symbols and the mandala of it is what happens. And you start to see and create a cultural reference in your mind that you're looking at the mandala of awakening. The ecosystem of reality waking you up is everything that happens. Nothing is extraneous. That doesn't mean we don't have formal practice. In fact, these 21 gestures, one of the few austere things about it is that this is so against me, so clearly I'm just learning from these teachings myself, but they're clear in this, that they want to be practiced in the morning as a formal thing, every morning, if possible, morning, to start your day. Because that's how you then turn the day into the living sadhana. I'm like, that's interesting, because if you leave it to me, I'd be like, let it just be nice to yourself and do it when you can, And now these teachings are coming through and saying, no way. You gotta do them in the morning before you start your day so that you have the view to make it a living sadhana. So that's kind of neat.
It's powerful.
It is.
It's a powerful start to my day.
Really?
It is.
I find that too, and I find it's kind of like if you wake up groggy and you go through a sequence of teachings that give you a big map, then suddenly you have oriented in an embodied way. You've had experiences, not just words, and that's really your touch point. And then you go in to look for them in the mandala and the ecosystem of reality, which is the living sadhana. So it's quite neat, quite elegant, I think, if I do say so myself as a victim of these teachings. So now I'm going to share these verses that are fresh off the presses due to the inspiration of this remarkable creature. I was like, I think let's try to do it. And then I would say some things, she'd transcribe, and then we would go through and go, wow, that was off. And the right idea, wrong words, and we tweaked it. This is as far as we've gotten. So anyway, I'll read it to you now, and we'll go from there. 21 Gestures, the Natural Transmission of the Living Sadhana. And maybe, Janet, maybe you could do the gesture, if you remember, for each one as I'm chanting. Okay. Just being. natural aliveness as itself. Nothing to accomplish, nothing left undone. Again and again, the song of change teaches us, continually played by all phenomena. Regardless of past commitments, vow only arises as our actual condition. Congruency is the only way forward. Embracing one's whole self, intimacy, melting the obscuring ice of self-hatred. In the resonant heart, just like me, all who I see long for freedom. Within dimensional embodiment, shining in totality, relative space reveals the expanse of space within. From within the expanse, exchanging self for other, emotional energy reaches its apex without eclipsing into story. Through sheer honesty and luminous self-respect, the light of kindness illuminates what is in the shadows. Whatever is present, especially that which you are ashamed of, it is the luminous offering that pleases the Dralas. Calling down the many-colored rainbow flowers like snowflakes all around, the transparent, ever-present teacher blesses us when we call for help. Nature, the most beautiful temple and skillful teacher, through opening our senses, her blessings enter our heart as the unborn transmission. You are my personal Drala, and truly, and thusly the peers give each other the transmission of goodness. The deity is none other than yourself, true nature expressing itself through your beautiful uniqueness. Revealed through the bliss that naturally arises with union, nature reveals to us the unmistakable example of non-conceptual wisdom to guide us like a torch. Like a lucid dream that cognizes and that which is cognized are of the same substance. Turning all perceptions around as the eye of nature looking back at us, we recognize the inseparable deities in never-ending union. Dissolving the meditator, letting movement uncoil itself, freedom through total surrender.
I mixed one up, sorry.
It's okay. In the spacious expanse of body-mind, thoughts are in their own place, whether present or absent, beyond, freeing like an empty house. In the freedom of no intention, so you went, this would be the next one.
Oh.
And then in the freedom of no intention, expressing itself as non-referential compassion, dawns the natural resonance of reality. Knowing the power of cognizance as motility, gotta work on that, sowing the seeds that ensure the benefit of future warriors, aspirations from within the expanse issue. Centerless, timeless, everything, the face of the deity, all time and space within the human heart. The holographic universe is true freedom. Yay, by this merrily all attain omniscience may defeat the enemy wrongdoing from the stormy waves of birth, all day sickness and death. From the ocean of samsara may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. All right.
So you would end with that dedication or one that you make yourself.
Beautiful and powerful. Thank you. It was very poignant.
Oh, thank you. So that's probably enough. I mean, just to give a taste of some things to come and things we can work on. And I think now at this point, just opening up. What would you like to discuss tonight and together?
Did you want to go, Lynn? I'm sorry.
All right, good. Go for it.
Me? Okay. That was awesome. Thank you, man. You know, when Janet first mentioned that you were doing mudras, I didn't realize it because I didn't read the text. I was just listening to it, which I often do late at night, and I love doing it late at night when I'm going, right when I'm going to sleep. It just puts me in that some reason that makes me connect to the words. But I was thinking, Nick, this is the only way I can kind of relate to this. I used to do some psychedelic type drugs, like LSD back in, like 30, 40 years ago. And I remember that feeling of like coming to a place, like a perception, like a doorway was kind of opening to me when I was really on the drug itself. It was really scary as well, but, and it wasn't a real pleasant feeling either, but I remember that sense that I was, it had opened my mind to a new way of seeing, as crazy as it is to be on a drug like that. But I remember the frustration coming down from the drug. And I remember thinking, I just can't find my way back up there, that pathway to how I was perceiving before. So what I'm thinking is this similar, that maybe you have tasted this new view, this Buddhist tantric view, and you're showing us through these mudras and through your words a pathway to get to that place of awareness, to this new place, this new awareness.
That's beautiful, Stephen. Wow, I should have you write the preamble for it here. I'll crowdsource this
with LSD and stuff.
Well, it's funny. There's a resurgence of that in some circles, like people getting into, like the psychedelics. I think
Ayahuasca.
Yeah, like stuff. Brooklyn occult scene and ayahuasca and DMT, and it's coming back in favor to some degree. Maybe for some people, I think there's maybe going to be some research resuming on it, or there's shifts in society, right? But yes. Well, that's a funny thing, because Trungpa Rinpoche said very much what you just said, that it opens a door where you see something true, but he said, but you can't walk through. And he said, with meditation, you can live in there, right? Mm-hmm. And, when people have done some of these practices, and when we get a chance to do some, I do think there is that experience of sacred world, And so this is these teachings are bizarre because they're kind of Buddhist, of course, but they're also very like Shambhalian and like I have tremendous respect for indigenous wisdom traditions, and I remember Trungpa Rinpoche being very clear that little Joe, who was a Yaqui Indian who hung out at Kerma Choling, in the early days, he said, oh yeah, he's attained fundamental enlightenment, and it was just like, yeah, he's not a Buddhist, but so I think there's something really neat about looking back at even Trungpa's own, even though there was that fear of spiritual materialism and things being, kind of consumeristic or inauthentic somehow, or, you know, there was that fear of materialism, of trying to use spirituality to make your ego stronger, or just pick what you want and not deal with any of the edges. So there was like this almost attitude that developed that could make Buddhists kind of fundamentalists in the Shambhala community, a little bit like cynical about anything and anybody else. But really, you know, it's not how Trungpa Rinpoche was. You know, people would ask him about a Hindu teacher and be like, oh, well, he woke up without a teacher. And Trungpa would say, yeah, he did. He didn't say, no, he didn't. He said, yeah, he did, but that's really hard to do. You know, so like he wasn't dogmatic, and there's a real openness there. And I think what's some interesting underpinnings to this set of teachings too is that nature becomes a primary teacher in it. It's kind of hard to see from those verses. It's in there, but nature becomes the top cat, which is an interesting thing. It seems to be a way forward of mixing Shambhala and Buddhist and indigenous type wisdom into something. It's almost like not even religious. But then again, I've heard Dzogchen people say that it's not even religion. Dzogchen's not even Buddhism, some of them. Right? So it's confusing. Who are you talking to? The main point is, is there a way to help us practice the insights of the wisdom tradition without holding on to the concept? The label gets in the way, and then the translation gets in the way, right? What is really going on? We're not talking about concepts. We're pointing to something that's true to all of us beyond any of those cultural presentations, and really. So the deep water here is that there's something about nature being a transmission. There's also something about our own body being a teacher, which is nature too, by the way. And, you know, I think you saw in the 25 classes, I kind of flipped the pyramid on the guru model with this, or you could say it flipped itself. The nature is the top. The phenomenal world is second down, then the teachings, then the teacher. And that is actually kind of how it's presented in the Nedang Gyatso, the traditional Kagyu. That's actually what they say. But let's face it, a lot of Tibetan culture put it the other way. You know, your nature's there. The world is sort of a teacher. The precious thing is the teachings. And that guru, you better just, you better just love them all the time in every way, no matter what they do. And they hit you with a sandal, anything, you know, just be like, thank you, more, you know. And so that's fine if it is, right? Consenting adults. But we have a cultural translation issue, and we also aren't collectivistly conditioned. And so part of this is like saying, okay, let's look at nature. Is anyone going to get mad at nature? Good luck if you do. There's also in these teachings an implicit understanding that like Western psychology is important to us, that some of those elements could be important on our path, and that some of that's in the first set of 7. Like you don't maybe hear it from the verse, you can't see it from the gesture maybe, but as it unpacks, there's a lot of work there that it's just acknowledging our specific conditioning around that stuff. But yeah, this is very psychedelic. I led, you know, one of the transmissions is actually from nature. The other one's is a transmission of the peers, a special kind of dyadic practice that when you do it, tell me what you think. tell me what you experience. So far, I haven't had anyone who's ever done it who hasn't been rendered into sacred world. You know, these things bring about sacred view. So yes, they do this stuff that you're saying. And even what you said, it's funny. I sometimes say that one of the practices, you know, the child's practice, which is a transmission of connecting with nature and its formations in nature.
Which we've done here.
Right.
We've done a video.
Right. And as we unpack that and go deeper into that practice, there's a whole, journey, like with every practice, right? It's the beginning, middle, and end. That I was doing that with the weekend, just this last weekend, and this woman said, "Thank you for facilitating or giving me permission to facilitate a psychedelic experience with my world." And I was like, "That's right. That's sacred world. That's the shift in perception that this work specializes in." And what are those substances doing? They're only tapping into what's already possible, just being open and meditating, and really opening the heart and senses. So anyway, as usual, Stephen, you set me off on a chain reaction. The guy who never shut up. So I appreciate your question so much. Oh, one last thing. We also include sexual energy, working with that energy in our path, and how that actually is a teacher. How the sort of orgasmic process itself is actually a transmission from nature as well, about something that we can use to test our meditation, and not in any dangerous way that could, it's completely doable in a safe and healthy way. We have so much fear and concern about those kinds of practice, or that kind of even sexuality altogether. And for myself, these are just, again, all these issues that arose in 20 years of being in Western Buddhism and seeing the repression there. I was always going, when are we going to talk about the fact that we're not monks and we have sex? And by the way, my teachers have sex and I have sex. And what are we doing? Who's doing what? And I literally, at a Shastri training I went to, I had they had one of these things, little sticker you could wear, and it's a topic starter. And I said, sex and practice. And all these like acharyas and shastras like, ooh, I want to talk about that. But no one really followed up. It's like exciting, but it's like, yeah, but we're not going to, no, that's too dangerous. And, understandably it needs a lot of care, but let's just start with the course level, how we shame ourselves with that energy, right? How can we bring mindfulness and awareness to the process of orgasm and actually realize that it's an incredible teacher? Like, this is not that radical, but it's incredibly helpful when you can test your meditation experience against a natural way that your body and mind and nature herself reveals to you a non-conceptual awareness, right? So it's like, come on. Now, if you want to call that X, Y, or Z, sure. But I call being human and curious about my body and mind as a practitioner. That's the thing about the living sadhana. There's not, hopefully, there's enough in there that it's covering a large swath of what we need to work on this. But that in itself is of course something has to be approached. It's in a sex positive light, and it's also in a consensual light, and in a light of safety and respect and care that has to be, however we would work with that, has to be done really carefully. But you get the idea. There's a bravery to not leaving things out. And hopefully a healing thing. Yeah. Sorry, Lynn, please.
So I just wanted to underscore, for me, this is all about, living my everyday life. How does this all inform, whether it's sexuality or tiredness or sickness or joy or, just any of that. Working with conflict within myself and with others, or, what happens when I experience more joy than I've been used to in my life, what happens then? How did the teachings hold up? So I do appreciate your willingness, again, Nick, to deal with our human experience in everyday life. It just makes everything less shame-based, not that it's not vulnerable, but just that we can talk about things. I chose to be a householder. That's the practice that I'm interested in, not monastic life. So I appreciate it.
Mm.
And being embodied in that, not just talking about it, but, experiencing it in my body. And also the reflection of that, for example, when you were talking and speaking and Janet, you were dancing with the energies, how it was affecting me in my body, both the sound and the visual and the feeling. So that's just, well, to be honest, it's so often boring if we don't get into how does this affect me in my life. Well, what's that expression? Sounds good, carries well, but what happens when the rubber meets the road?
So good. There's also this interesting thing about this, which this all arose out of the expression of social meditation, which is this dialogic, embodied, communicative expression of Dharma. So for example, social meditation is this awareness practice. So, the first gesture is just about being aware. And I could say a lot about how important awareness is in Western culture, especially situational awareness, as opposed to just mindfulness. We're not make mindfulness make a better employee. Compare yourself to your meditation object and beat up on yourself when you fail to be perfect. That's weapon of mass self-destruction. That's sometimes how I'm looking at mindfulness without the real view. And mindfulness never travels without the other wing of awareness. They go together. And so awareness practice, I'm now really saying, okay, with trauma sensitivity, I'm realizing that a close kind of focus on mindfulness could really make someone claustrophobic, trigger them, make them tight. Repression could come up, blockages. So what if you start instructing people to meditate by being alive? If you'd like to follow your breath, do that. If you'd like to listen to sounds, do that. If you'd like to just be in your body, however you'd like to. You know what? I trust you. I trust your intelligence. I think you know yourself better than some. And by the way, it's going to be dialogic. You start there, but you're not left alone. We're going to explore what's happening. When we get together and do these things, and we do that, and we talk about what's happening, we learn from each other. So that's just an example. You can, of course, someone could count their breaths in that, right? The funny thing about it is that Trungpa Rinpoche, when he first came, he gave customized instruction to every student, right? But due to scale, he had to stop, not due to quality. Not to say that the Shambhala training wasn't awesome as a basic, it's amazing, it's great, I love it. I'm still into that. I still do that. But this is another offering that's designed to kind of make it so that people aren't as intimidated by awareness practice. And part of how we do that is with the social meditation, it's a cheat. Because we're tapping into the natural biophysical conditioning of being a human organism, which we're social. So our primary awareness skill set is in the social interactive field. So social meditation is sneaky as beep, because you think, oh, I can't meditate. And then you get in a social meditation circle and you're like, oh my God, it's so intense. I'm so alive. I'm so present. Yeah, because we're using the very 200, 300,000 year conditioning of our survival to, it's pretty sneaky. And it works. Can't wait till these crazy scientists measure it and go, it really works. And I'll be like, yeah, I know. I'll be like 80 and then I'll die. But at least someone else hopefully will keep going if it's useful. The things I've seen. You wouldn't believe the things I've seen when people do social meditation and the way they drop into their heart and how much power that creates and how much quicker they get to a non-conceptual confidence and awareness.
Mm.
Impermanence, always seeing it in the circle. Our own speech, like I share something and then I stop. Little death, so there's like, that's the 4 reminders, but there's these ways that it's happening all the time. Living sadhana. You know, what is our commitment? Well, what are you feeling right now? I took a vow 3 years ago to be a Buddhist. Well, that's great. What the hell are you doing right now? Because, you know, what the great noble ones would do is they'd look at someone and say, I see your aura. I know you've kept your vow. That's what they did. They didn't care what you said. They'd be like, yeah, shut up, kid. Sorry, being so funny. No, they'd be like, look at you and be like, yeah, you're okay. So it happens right now. What am I committed to today? And let's face it, when we're in touch with that, it's much more potent. It's like, oof, you know, and it changes from moment to moment. It might show us over time that it's really the same thing, but it has different manifestations, and that's actually really important to connect with. And as it goes on, not just self-love as an idea, but as an embodied experience and as working with all the different parts of who we are, understanding our relative psychology well enough so that when we configure our awareness towards practice, we're not recreating some of the dysfunctions that we have in how we relate to ourselves. I mean, I think we're seeing that a lot, that people can bring neuroses to the path that emphasizes certain aspects of the path, and you can experience a transpersonal awareness, but you haven't addressed some of the relative stuff, and you liberate it, but then it keeps coming back. And so how do we like actually integrate fully the ultimate view and the relative? And honestly, I really don't feel like in Tibetan culture, in a monastery or in a cave, does anyone really care about your neuroses that much? Wasn't a lot of room for it. You're not dating, you're not working, you're not having sex, you're not drinking. You go to the chants, you do your job. In a cave, my goodness, who would know? So with a living sadhana, in a social practice, it's important. So anyway, all of these things emerge again and again in social meditation. Even the idea that someone is your personal drala, that you see the sacredness of the world, that they're looking back at you and you're really having this non-dual experience of awareness through your peers, through another person. That there's all these beautiful insights that are happening from the different parts of the circle. So that is the birthing ground of this kind of practice. And just to give another bit of background, I should have said that earlier, but I think we do that a bit, and that's also a lot of the work I do with people. And what we found is this is a codification of things that arose in the field of awareness of collective meditation. It's not, it's like, oh yeah, these are things that arise naturally without anybody thinking it up. And then, you know, somebody comes along and draws a funny drawing that looks really psychedelic, and it's like, yeah, that's true, but it's based on real, almost like you could say research in first person or group research. And it's very flexible, right? Because if we come up with something as a group, and Lynn, when you were talking, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to hear more from Lynn about all the things that could be explored. I mean, conflict, you know, sickness, these things that are part of the living sadhana, right? Yeah, that's what I hope these kinds of teachings become responsive to. And I just know that we can grow in realization through practice in the world. I know it's not necessary to be in a cave. I know that. So I'm convinced, and I think, yeah, doubling down on it.
It's interesting because I was even, in terms of the mudra, in terms of you know, awareness of our shadow and the sense of offering that too, but I was also almost imagining in conflict both within and without, you know.
Yes.
That sense of connection, because we're dancing with each other's shadows as well as each other's hearts, you know.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And this is how these teachings will unpack, right? Not as so much as a fixed. I mean, I didn't write this down till today, and we've been doing this for a while. That gives you an idea. It's not a verbal fixed thing. I just wanted something to, I thought, okay, this will be helpful. I mean, there are some themes, but there's more than that. These all get unpacked, and each gesture could honestly be like its own heavy retreat and exploration. I don't know if we'll have the luxury to do it that way, but we'll do our best to give justice to the depth that's possible. And luckily, maybe we don't need to do everything. But the fact, it's almost like we also have talked, I've also thought about sub-gestures, you know? Like there's the awareness where you place your hands on your thighs, but then a sub-gesture for that could be your fists and then opening. So the idea, wherever there's a focal point in your meditation, you open the focal point to include the totality. That's a very specific technique. And this is a physical somatic reminder, but you could start to see how in a culture of learning together, a new gesture could emerge to express something that needs to be expressed. And it becomes like, like conflict resolution, or something, who knows, So there's all these things that could, it's creative. I think this is very, I just want to point out that this is a dynamic social experiment of exploring the Dharma as an embodied, dialogic, non-conceptual dance of practice, right? It's a living, truly a living sadhana, also in that things would emerge that would be unique to certain situations and needs, right? And we as a community or practitioners would be responsive to, for me, that creativity doesn't scare me at all. In fact, that's the most exciting thing to me.
I felt moved to.
All right, we're back. Okay. You were, sorry about that. I don't know where you lost us. But.
I was just starting to say that I felt moved to come up with a gesture that sort of encapsulated what I felt I was committing to, sort of in general over the long term in my own practice, which is seeing through the eyes of the heart. And so I do that either right before or right after the commitment gesture.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it really, really brings it alive for me. I have something to kind of reflect back on, not in a, remember your commitment, but in a gentle, all right, I want to do this.
Mm. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I was just thinking, discussing with a client this morning. He was very clear about his wife and partner's, not being able to see, but he was doing the same thing, And he recognized he was doing it, but he said, I don't know how to get out of that. I don't know how, so releasing from that. That's, that as an example in everyday life, that's beautiful.
Mm.
The wisdom's within, so it's like we're remembering that wisdom within us when we see through the heart.
Yes. There's something, it really has to be played around with to be appreciated. And of course the gestures aren't the point, it's the subjective experience, but they become part of triggering that. And that's so powerful. Darn thing. Can't tell if we're gone or not. Okay, we're back. Stephen, did you have something you wanted to share?
No,
Oh,
I mean, no,
okay.
I didn't raise my hand. Thank you.
Okay. Good. I like the indeterminacy of and the groundlessness of really being open together to process. You know, the indeterminacy or freedom of our nature. It's unbelievable, right? And we see a world riddled with dogmatic binaries and you know, you even, I mean, I'm even becoming so, you know, with Buddhism or any religion where there's fundamentalists, you know, the Buddhist fundamentalists, they don't yell at anyone else outside, they yell at each other because they think that's appropriate. But not, they can't yell at the Christians, but they can yell at each other for not doing it right. But I mean, I on my travels, you know, this summer I got to go to the Hopi Nation. And, you know, the Hopi Nation had this incredible connection with His Holiness the Karmapa. And they identified each other as mutually, like, so importantly to each other's cultures and spiritual paths. And when I went there, I made some friends and I felt the energy of the land and the blessings. And I can tell you it was beautiful for me because I knew without concepts of religion, yes, I feel these energies of spiritual power, and I know that they're genuine. And the people I met, of course, anytime anybody takes a system and tries to make it the new post-religious, you know, model, isn't that a funny co-opting of concept once again? And you dump yourself right back down into the barrel. No offense to anyone who does. I think it's cool. It's a great impulse, but it's just you can't cheat the system. The only way to have a really non-conceptual and meaning transcending warfare of binaries, you know, left, right, in, out, mine, yours, this, that level, it's fine to use binaries like they make computers run. It's great. We can see each other. It's crazy. There's nothing wrong with them. But let's look back at the Buddha. You know, don't call me the Buddha. Don't call this Buddhism. Don't write down what I say. Don't make pictures of me, please. Don't make statues of me. Don't believe what I say. Test it out like you just go like, think we had a hard time with those instructions, right? Because it's so raw and so direct. And yet I love the pictures. I love the statues. I love all the stuff. It's great. So it's all okay. But what I've seen here in the West with Dharma coming here is without real trust in something non-conceptual and in good intentions mutually, none of the rest of it really matters. And that can't be mandated by any systemic thing. Like you can't say, I'm joining a state of mind now. Well, I will do that. You know, like you can't join, you have to earn that. So anyway, I'm just super, super glad that we have the intimacy to play together and learn together, and share our experiences as we go through things together. Which does bring me, I guess, to one last thing, which is this idea of doing the in-person retreat. I really do want to do it. I also know that people's schedules and availability, you know, I think it would require some collective planning, you know, to find the right venue, the right time, so that the most of us can be there together. And I just think, I just want it to happen so bad, because it's like, I know it will help us go to the next level with what we're doing, and also with what we do here. Like, this will be supported and enriched. And this really is so great what it is. And I'd love to think about that. So I'm wondering, just, you know, last time I sent out a poll about it, people were sort of like, yeah, it can be pretty much anywhere, anytime. And I was like, okay. Can we be a little more committed to like a specific thing? So like, maybe, I don't know what would be the best way to do it. You know, is it that we send out a doodle poll and I propose some location and date? I think, you know, I wanted to find a place that we could, it's a combination of factors, right? Affordability, because if we rent a place that has rooms, it can be a little more expensive for the retreat. So that's a concern, but it's not impossible. If I can get us in a place that doesn't have great accommodations, but certainly would have, like, you know, you could sleep. There'd be some rooms and some shrine room floor, and like, okay, Steve is voting on. So there are places that like that are in the East Coast, that I could do that even maybe in December, for example, but that might be way too soon. So we could try something for the new year, the next year.
Nature is really important to me.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because actually this series of practices requires nature in a pretty real way. And fortunately, the place I'm thinking does have that. Although when it's snowy, nature's still good. You just have to have warm clothes. And I know you're from, no offense, but you're used to warm.
I have my Germany clothes, they work.
That's right, you do. Oh, I forgot about that. Okay, you're covered. Yeah. So, I mean, one way we could do it is I can just sort of say, hey, I'm doing this. Can we get some people to commit? And then you come. That's kind of simple-ish. Just a quick show of hands. If we did something in Western Massachusetts that would be in December, how many people think they could get a weekend off, maybe a long weekend, like Thursday to Sunday night or something? I mean, also we could do a long, okay, 2, all right, okay, yeah. So that's a 50 split. So maybe the doodle thing would be good, because that way I get, I just can't wait to do this with y'all. These are my Southern there. Y'all, I was just in Atlanta.
Y'all.
It catches on you, you know, geez, it was only a weekend. And yet I do think that, you know, we don't all have to be there, but it would be nice to have as many as possible. So yeah, maybe a doodle poll isn't the worst thing. I'll send it out to the group and you can fill it out, and I'll give a couple options for a couple different times. Yeah, I'm excited about it. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts before we close? I mean, we have a few more minutes we could go, but just anything that's coming up that you wanted to talk about in practice, or anything that's come up tonight? Yes.
I'm just curious about Phil. What's on your mind, Phil?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, no, I'm just, it's so powerful. I feel very grateful to be a part of this. And the mudras were amazing because they brought back these memories I have of my exposure to dance, to modern dance. And now I'm realizing that what I didn't really appreciate as much, I can now start to go back with those memories and see the value because of what I'm learning with everyone. And I've really enjoyed the 15, how many? 25? Were there 25 classes?
Oh yeah, there were 25.
Oh my gosh. That is amazing, Nick. That is just so wonderful. I want to thank you so much for taking all of the time to put all of that together and your willingness to share it in the way that you do, which is just so wonderful. I love the experimental nature of how you are approaching the teachings. I just love that. It makes it so much alive. I feel really like what's going on is such a well-kept secret that I feel almost like kind of a little bit guilty for having being privy to this experience. I feel like I want to be more of an evangelist than I am of everything that's going on here. And I love how we continue to really take sort of the community that we have and bring it into our practice in the way that we do. With I think that Sanghas are a community, and they're wonderful and great. But I feel like what we're doing is just taking it that one step further of bringing our practice and our community really together in a very I don't know if it's revolutionary or radical or what, but it's really, 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 really great for me, at least. I really am enjoying, through osmosis, all of what you've gone through in a very, in a very hardcore way with all of your training and your learning, and to just be able to sort of kind of absorb that in this way is just so it's like a luxury. It really is. I really appreciate it. So, and I also, I could go on and on and on, by the way, but I'll say one more thing. And I really love the syncretic approach that you have, which is I think in the end, kind of fulfilling the really true nature of Indian traditions as a whole. And just the sense I have of this sort of unity through diversity, and just very, very plural. So I feel really, really great to be with everyone.
I think Phil's our poet laureate.
Hey, Maho, thank you, Phil. It's so inspiring. I agree. There's this cohort that we have, right? The inner Sangha. It's like there's Sangha, and then there's like the family Sangha. Like we're tight. And I've just seen again and again, that's the best learning models happen that way, whether organically through larger groups. If you looked at Shambhala, that's how people would move through it, as rafts of cohorts. And then when they got separated, sometimes they'd lose steam or they'd be heartbroken, because that's actually I think, and I've been talking with Jeff Cox, who's one of our senior social meditation leaders, but also just a great Dharma teacher and coach. And Janet and I work with him a lot, and we should have him on here sometime. You would love him. I mean, but he's been saying about the 21 Jeff, he's also involved and probably going to be someone, helping you do it. And he's been saying, oh, we should, have small cohorts of people that commit to do it as a little group and then go through it. And I'm like, oh my God, that's what I want to pilot with all of you. You know what I mean? Like, instead of this, like, oh, let's go and have a center and like all this stuff, which is fine. That's great too. But this is different. This is like, no, let's be committed. And then we have this like buddy system thing, right? And the accountability. Exactly. So yeah, I think that's kind of where we're going. And hopefully, I can train more people to also have cohorts, and so it can have scale too, and we can all kind of play with that. But it's anyway, it's fun. I'm so glad we're doing it. Thank you, Phil, for
Thank you.
yeah.
And thank you, Phil, for naming what our gift Nick is to all of us.
Oh. Yeah, so much love to you all, and wow, we did it. We did it. Okay.
Oh, we did lose our connection.
We lost it once, but apparently the recording just kept plugging. So I hopefully those of you who weren't with us tonight, you'll still see it. And I think our next, just so you know, the next online courses or online course will be on the 7 Delights. So I think we'll send that song to you in from the Khenpo Rinpoche. Do we already send that, or do we? No. So we'll send that to you, the verses, and
hopefully sometime between now and Sunday, and then we can start talking about it on Sunday.
Great. And then there's actually a song version of it at the bottom of the page that we'll send but I'm going to sing my version too, which might be slightly different than the way they sing it. There's little variations, but same basic melody, beautiful, sweet song. And I'm going to go through that as 7 classes. So that'll be our next sort of 7 Sunday class things. And I still want to do that and the Sadhana Mahamudra commentary, because I feel like these are just great. Some of these Khenpo songs or songs by great masters, and then some of that is just great teachings to support what we're doing. But I know that as we move into the 21 gestures and the living sadhana work, all of that will just be helpful. And it's totally in the same stuff. But I do think that somehow the in-person gathering to kind of kick that off feels like it's like a living personal transmission would be helpful. Although we can totally do it online. But you know what I mean? I think both have to happen at some point. Yes.
I was curious because, Stephen, I saw your hand and your kind of thumbs up when Nick was talking. But when Nick talked about Thursday through, I wasn't sure, were you on board with that or?
For me?
Yeah, I was curious.
Yeah, no, I definitely would want to do it. And I would probably do it no matter what happens. But I was just thinking of work because I've used my vacation time for this year. But I could maybe like pull it off, at least for the weekend. I know I could do it.
And it would be really, so maybe we'll try, maybe in the new year, we could even do it in the new year when things reset for people. And I'll set out some doodles of different times, and hopefully we'll get the most of us together so that our cohort is, it's such a precious thing. Can you imagine all of us in the same room practicing? I mean, come on, we've earned this. We've worked hard for a long time and we love each other. So it'll only make this better. I know that. So anyway, we'll send that out. But anyway, in the short term, the 7 stanzas of the 7 Delights, each stanza will be a class, and I'll record a little commentary on each verse, and then Janet will facilitate us going through them, and so that'll keep us busy for a little while longer, and then we'll set up another half-day retreat for this next part of the Sadhana Mahamudra sometime in the coming month. Okay, should we dedicate the merit again? All right. By this merit may all obtain omniscience, may it defeat the enemy wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Buddha's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorant sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. Now you know what this gesture means. This one actually came from Khenpo Rinpoche, right? Jazz hands, but it's also for blessings. I double purposed it, okay? Okay. Good night. Hey, Maho.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.